Here we go.
G'day fans and welcome to another exciting episode of Rip It Off the Card. Here we are. It's all very, very exciting. What's today? Wednesday, isn't it? So all very good, very, very groovy. We're having a great time. The world's going to the crapper. There's fights, there's blues, whatever. There's earthquakes. And Aaron and I are still sitting here doing as we do. How are you, old son? What's happening in the big wide world?
I'm good. I've got to ask, does Angelo wait there to get high first every single week?
I tell you what, he's a keen puppy. There's no doubt about that.
Fast off the gum, you know.
Absolutely. I love it. Yeah, Thomas, boom, boom, shake the room. So for those who don't know, today we did have an earthquake in Melbourne today. Absolute, mate. I thought of the 1974 movie Earthquake where there's like bridges coming down and cars making up. Luckily, it wasn't anything like that at all. But yeah, so a bit of sense around action. What can I say? So there you go. Question I got to ask you, mate. Now, because of your store, your action figures are like tottering on the brink at the best of times. So did you lose all your Star Wars and in particular your G.I. Joe figures?
Well, the short answer is yes. It's going to be a couple of days of restacking figures. And I was doing it for a couple of hours today. And then I thought, wait a second, I have a lackey called Darren and Chad to do this when they're around. So I went on and did other things.
Well, guess what? I don't know who the Darren person is, so you must have employed somebody else because that certainly ain't me. So
Find everything in Victoria at the moment is Ming the Merciless.
Very,
and you
very
know
cool.
what? Now that the hand of Ming has been seen, I've stuffed everyone.
Yeah. Hang on, I've got all these buttons I've got to push, so that's why it's so hard for me to keep on top of what's going on. Give me a second, everybody. Very, very, very cool. Now, I like this one from Christy. Her autograph picture of Mark Hamill fell off the wall. Oh, my God, wow. Luke has fallen to the dark side.
That's like almost a religious experience. Like some people have their pictures of Christ or deities fall off the wall, but us, we have pictures of Luke Skywalker and Jedi Knights. So.
Very, 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 very cool. So it was a kind of, hang on. There was it's the boys and all. Is that art? Oh, it's the boys. Oh, we're the boys now, are we? So yeah, it's very, very. Hey, look, hang on. We're the boys from this person, and we're gentlemen from Luke. So
well, at least he's respecting his elders, at least. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
Good to see, Luke.
Love it. Now, for those who don't know, something actually happened today besides of the earthquake, and so this actually happened at Aaron's store. And I think I need to sort of just explain what's happening. I just got this little thing I've got to show you. So if you don't know what it is, and Aaron doesn't know what this is, then he clearly wasn't paying attention. Aaron's Collectibles today only earth-splitting earthquake sale. You'll look like this guy when you see what's on offer. Action figures, they're groundbreaking. Star Wars stuff, it's tremor-inducing. Jockey Who coming out of the wazoo. It's earth-shattering. We even have friggin' Smurfs. They're house-trembling. Would you buy used collectibles off this man? Of course you would. Aaron's Collectibles today only earthquake sale. Too bad you missed it. So there.
Well, I didn't know that was happening, but I've got to tell you that only gets a 1 on the Richter scale from me.
Yeah, that's what happens when I got nothing better to do. So yeah, go. During the day. Very, very cool. Where are we? Hang on, worst actually. I could have gone in a world gone mad. Only one store is selling collectibles as we know them.
We need the guy that does the JB Hi-Fi ads, I think.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I like that. I'd buy that for $1. Well done. Very, very, very. Yeah, I love it, Joel. Classic. Yeah, I know. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to get a job after that. Now, I've got something I've got to show. Where are we? Now, last week, we were talking about Winnie the Pooh. And yes. And as of course, you know, the word Winnie inspires a different thing when you're looking at the Australian language. And of course, it inspires the concept of Winfield. And someone said about the Winnie Blues. I thought, mate, you don't need the Winnie Blues. What you need is the Winnie. So there you go. Get into it any way you can. So what do you reckon, old son?
That would be another totally inappropriate product that would go into the vial file. So I've got to say we've got a good one tonight, and my son, who doesn't watch this show because it's all a bit too nerdy for him, he always comes the day before and has a look what's going into the vial file because he actually likes that. So nice to see that Michael's vial file is more popular than his dad.
Love it. Yeah, I like it. It's already violated. Very, very cool. Yes, and you can say, yes, it's like JB Hi-Fi. Well, it is because like all their products are awesome and fantastic and spectacular. And it's like, would you buy one TV over another just because the ad said it's unreal? I love it. Oh, my goodness gracious, mate. Hang on, where do you suck it? Okay, very, very cool. All right, so I guess we should move on. As to be expected, this is going to be yet another long one. As the old man said, that was me. I never met a long one I didn't like. So I suppose we should get into it. And otherwise, we'll never get to the end of the night. And believe me, this is a night you definitely don't want to miss. Let's see how we go. So what do we got?
Well, there was so much product out this week. I had to trim down what we're actually showing because there's a lot of cool stuff. So we'll do this fast just to get through everything. What are we going to go with first? Now, a month or so back, we showed the Thing prototypes and some unpainted heads for the new Thing figure, the survival station version of McCready. This is the final, and it's out now, and it's absolutely fantastic. As you can see, it's got the scene there with the blood test. It comes with flamethrowers, alternate heads, different poses, all the stuff you need to recreate the scene from the Thing. So that is definitely one of those horror figures I will be adding to my collection. What do you think of that one, Dags?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, I still would prefer I mean, I know it's not that high, so the Kurt Russell look-alike kind of isn't there. But if you put an eye patch on him, suddenly he becomes Snake Plissken, so that kind of works for me. But I was trying to work out what the hand, the red thing coming out of the hand was, and as soon as you mentioned it was the blood test, I go, oh, yeah, fair enough then. But the flamethrower looks very good, I've got to say. So very, very cool. All you need now is the rest of the base. Sorry, go on. Sorry. Hang on. Oh, I'll catch off. Start again. What was that?
Yep. I do remember you saying when you saw the prototype that you didn't think the head was that accurate, and now it's painted. I was wondering if you thought it was any better, but you still think it's not perfect?
Yeah. I mean, we're so used to good quality sculpts now, it kind of doesn't work for me. But you know what? It still looks good. It's great. Luke watched the Thing the other just recently. So there you go. Don't forget there are 3 Thing movies you got to watch. So yes, you can't just stop at one. So very, very cool. But yes, if you like your things, boom tish, go out and buy this one. Very, very groovy. Next up,
there's actually 5 if you include the Addams Family. But the other range of figures that are coming out.
Hang on. I'm just going to catch off there. It's down here, isn't it? Thing down there.
Thank you, Thing.
Anyway, move on.
The other range of figures that came up this week that I thought were pretty cool and you don't see a lot of merchandise on, and it's a fantastic movie, is The Princess Bride. So these again are McFarlane figures that are the smaller action figure size, but Andre the Giant really is true to scale. He is pretty huge there. So you've got Indigo Montoya with his father's sword, of course, and then you've got they call him the Dread Pirate Roberts because that's the character he's dressed as at the moment, but that's actually Farm Boy Wesley, Princess Buttercup in her red dress, and Andre the Giant with his smashing rock, which is pretty cool. So that was another one. I don't really have much Princess Bride memorabilia, and they came up and I thought I'm definitely going to have to grab those. So were you ever into the Princess Bride, Dags?
You know what? I had a feeling you were going to ask me that, and I did watch it because there was a lot of hype about it at the time, and I was actually a little, I'll use the word distressed, I guess, with the scene where they kill, what's his name, with the torture and all that. That didn't work for me at all, and that was enough for me to just turn off it altogether. So I've seen it once, and once was enough. So
I think it's interesting. There's sort of a whole new generation that have been brought to it because of the Deadpool Once Upon a Deadpool Christmas, where they recreated the Princess Bride framework of him telling the story to Fred Savage. So kind of one of those timeless movies that's crossed over to another generation, and the people who originally saw it still love. So cool memorabilia if you're looking for some Princess Bride stuff.
So Gavin said he's never seen it. It was very popular when it came out in the 80s and had Fred Savage in it, and Columbo, Peter Falk, that's right. But yeah, it worked well. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, you're right. Spoil. Well, if you haven't seen it, it came out 30-something years ago. So get with the program, Kyle. So yeah, you haven't seen it now. That's like saying, oh, did you know at the end of Metropolis, right? The chick is the robot. You go, oh, spoilers. Like, dude, it came out 90-something years ago. Oh, dear. Yeah, and you're right. It is a classic. But yeah, that was a bit. Sorry, that was. Hang on, wrong button. Hang on. I'm trying to get. Yeah, that was I just sort of. I found that a bit upsetting. So I said, nah, not interested. I'll move on from there. Anyway, so we move on as well.
Now, the other thing that's very cool this week is the previous Back to the Future Hot Toys have been the original Marty, the DeLorean, and then Back to the Future 2 Marty and Doc, and they've all sold out and just gone through the roof value-wise. This week, Hot Toys released pictures of their new Back to the Future 3 Hot Toys, and once again, they've done an absolute fantastic job with the likenesses, the accessories, and capturing the mood from the movie. Now, when I was growing up, I loved Back to the Future and I loved Back to the Future 2. And then I thought number 3 was a bit of almost like a Disney version of the movie, not quite as good. But my opinion's changed as I've got a bit older and mellowed a bit, where I just see it as a trilogy that's one whole movie and all of the parts are sort of equally good to me. I love how they've given Marty his bulletproof vest there from the Clint Eastwood movie.
See, what they need to do is actually rename that. Instead of Marty McFly, actually call him Clint Eastwood.
that would be pretty cool. They give them all various changes of clothes from the movie. So sometimes with Hot Toys, they don't give as much accessories and stuff, and sometimes they really do. You've got the Frisbee pie dish there, and you've got all of Doc's different inventions and different things. It even comes with the little like homemade version of the wooden DeLorean that he has when he's demonstrating the model to Marty. So this lot, Hot Toys have really gone over the top to make this a really amazing set. And like the other Back to the Future Hot Toys, I think these will be available for a little bit, and when they're gone, they will really be those pieces that people that are really sought after for people's collection. Interesting, there's a Hot Toys scale DeLorean there, but it's the Back to the Future 3 one, which hasn't been released, with the side white wall tires, which could mean they've just made one for the photo shoot, or it could be in the works for later down the track. So we'll have to see what happens there.
So you wouldn't say these items are collectible. You would actually say that they are timeless. So, yeah, very, very cool. They do look very, very groovy, though. So what you need is the future version. Was it the 2015 version or whatever it was? So, of these things as well. But, I've got to admit that is very, very cool. Hang on, good stuff. Yeah, right, Dave. Yeah, they are very, very good. And I do actually, got to admit, I do actually like the photograph that they've got here of them. They're replicating from the newspaper article, which is kind of cool. Which probably explains why Marty doesn't fall. Sorry, go on. What?
With the accessories that come with them, there is a little tiny version of the photograph that Doc gives Marty. Yeah. And I wonder if it's a photograph of them or it's a photograph of the Hot Toys, sort of. So the Hot Toys version.
That is a very, very good point. Anyway, we're going to chuggle along, and you wouldn't believe what's coming up next. Oh, my God, it's a bit of Greg King's Cheaper Things. This is a story that is like becoming as big as the Star Wars saga itself. So what do we got going on tonight?
Well, this is a segment that's like kind of got its own life, hasn't it? Last week we looked at the Indiana Jones that Dave sent us through. This week I got more spam about the Indiana Jones stuff. So not only could you buy the fertility idol, I got the Cross of Coronado, the Grail, the Shakara stones, the headpiece to the Staff of Ra, the Seraphim off the top of the Ark, all half price. No, I didn't end up buying any of them because of the experience that Spankin had. So we've got just a consumer warning about that. One of our members has bought something from one of these ads and got something that's so NQR that they got their money back for it. So if that comes up on your Facebook feed, I would recommend not taking a bite and getting any of that stuff.
Very good.
But this week, I couldn't resist this. This was like a massive horror box that turned up on my Facebook feed. Some I guess, factory in China, you would have to say, decided they're going to put horror boxes together to send us, to bring us joy for Halloween if we order now. And the boxes were 2 different versions. There was a standard and a deluxe. So, of course, ordered the deluxe. And you can get one of hundreds of different horror figures. I think anyone who collects horror, you can see there's a mixture of the McFarlane and some of the NECA stuff. And then down the bottom there's also a Hot Toys Joker. I'm really hoping that I get a Hot Toys Joker, because that's like an out of print one and goes for about $600. So, but you know, the odds are pretty much against that. The ad was really interesting because I don't even know what I have really ordered. Basically, they said you'll get a box with horror stuff in. I don't know if I'm going to get 1 or 2 figures or a box overloaded with stuff. Here are some of the things that they said you could get: quarter scale Predator figures, Ash statues, Pennywise statues, Regan from The Exorcist, and then you've got the sideshow 12-inch figures from different horror movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. All of this for like a crazy low price. Now you can see there were 2 different versions up the top there. There was one for $30.06 and another one for $40.99. And they guaranteed me if I bought the expensive one, it'd be super lucky and I'd get something I'd be extra pleased with and really happy. So of course I went with the $40.99. They said the minimum value of what I would receive would be $129. So I'm pretty sure that me and Greg are going to be making out like bandits on this one.
I couldn't help but thinking, I'm looking up here and I'm looking at the really grotesque looking image of Reagan. Then I look down here and I see the really grotesque look of Pennywise. And then I look up here and I see the really grotesque look of Greg King.
Poor Greg.
Sorry, Greg. I couldn't help myself. I've been looking at these pictures thinking, I've got to find a joke in there somewhere. So, yes, very, very, very cool.
So, like, again, it was one of those fantastic ads that is, the English is 90% there, but not quite there. Are you ready to accept fear? And yeah, my wallet is ready to accept fear because I don't know if I'm going to get anything out of this. But Greg and I are pursuing all these cheap and nasty Facebook ads so you don't have to risk your own money. Again, it was one of those really weird ads where they say it costs you this much and it's free shipping. And then when I went to the checkout, it cost me about $10 more and I had to pay for shipping. And then the cost was totally different from both of the quotes. So I did put in a deluxe box, but I have no idea what's coming. And the other thing is, we've been doing this for 4 or 5 weeks now, and we haven't seen anything from it yet. So hopefully this segment will get a bit more fun when stuff starts rocking up. Here is Greg's table of thrift, which is looking thriftier and thriftier every week. Obviously kept in his pocket, and he jots down these totals on a coffee table somewhere when he gets the chance. At the moment, we've ordered a Transformer mystery box. We've ordered a Commander Cody replica helmet, which is professionally hand-painted. We've ordered a set of leather-bound replica books from classic 80s movies, and we've ordered the horror mystery box. And so far in Australian dollars, we're in over $200. So far nothing has arrived, and Greg hasn't been able to give his thumbs up or thumbs down on anything. So when stuff starts rocking up, hopefully this segment will get a bit more interesting. So far it's more of a consumer warning for people about buying some of these things that seem too good to be true.
Jared's comment about the English is always the best part. Funny enough, he spelled English. I should assume that's intentional.
Yes.
I know exactly where you're coming from, Jared, because I actually had an email interview from Italy regarding my Batman collection, and they kept referring to me as a her. So can you ask? So obviously someone was asking someone else these questions, saying, "Can you ask her why she bought this?" Like, hang on, it's like he and her in Italian and English. Obviously, yeah, a little bit confusing. So
because these shows are going longer, I'm trying to not go through reading everything. But there were some really fun stuff where if you read it, it goes, "We cannot guarantee what you will get, but if you buy more, we guarantee you'd be super lucky and extra happy with the products that you receive." So I was like, I want to be super happy with what I receive. So I bought more, and we'll see what we get.
I love this. Mrs. Daggs, yeah, she's in the other room at the moment watching TV. All right, so, so Greg King's Cheaper Things, very exciting. Yes, we waited. And, of course, when the time comes, when these things turn up and Aaron gets to open these things on screen, we have no idea how that process is going to work. There could be item like wrap like 50,000 layers of paper, and he's got to sit there on camera, sitting there going, hurry up, hurry up. Oh, jeepers creepers. But anyway, while all that is going on, while your items are being shipped across the world, even as we speak to all these eager viewers hanging out for these things to turn up, we need to do something far more interesting. And that, of course, is to violate something. And that means it's time for the vial. There you go.
Now, the vial being an evil Sith Lord is not locked down at the moment, and he's still sending us postcards from all over the world. And he is still violating the Magic Kingdom of Disneyland. So this is another postcard from Disneyland. And the vial seems to be having lots and lots of fun, especially in Storybook Land.
I'll tell you what, well done, Dave. Yeah, Black. I didn't know who said it. I just know it was like, hurry up. I just knew it was from Mr. Squiggle. So, yes, well done. All right, so what are we violating tonight? Oh, no, not the princesses.
Well, we're looking at some Disney princesses. We're looking at two different Disney franchises in particular. We're looking at Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and we're looking at Frozen. And there is some real nightmare-inducing stuff here. Once again, the vial has reached down into the black heart of Disney and pulled up an amazing crop of bad, great, amazing things for us to look at. So with no further ado, let's go and see what he's got for us first. So here we go, Frozen, and there's some really choice things here. The first one isn't really something that's really horrible until you think about it. It's a 6-pack of Olaf ice treats, where you get to eat one of your favorite Disney characters. And thinking about it, if the roles were reversed and snowmen could come to life and eat children, it would be one of those things that wasn't so appropriate for Disneyland. But there have been people in America that have made scary Olafs for their front yard during the winter when there's
Got a new person here, Gillian. So, g'day, Gillian, the new kid in town. Well done. Welcome to the show, Gillian. I can only say it only gets worse from here. So, there you go. If you're thinking, is this the best that you guys have got to offer? Yeah, I'm afraid it is. So, there you go.
So,
continue on.
So, Disney thought, well, we can top that. And they actually made an Olaf ice drink maker where you take the head of Olaf off, fill it full of ice cubes, and then use a grinder on the back of him, basically for his guts to spill out into a little cup, and then you can color it whatever you want with different flavors and drink it. Now, this is a double violated item because if you look at the head that you take out to put the ice in on the right bottom there, it's a rather suspicious looking piece of equipment, I've got to say. And who would have thought when snowmen ejaculated it was black?
See, I didn't see that, right? There's obviously a difference between you and I'm just looking at the thing on the right-hand side saying, what's the problem with that? I don't get it. And now you're telling me, it's like, you clearly, you got a bit of a suspicious mind there, Mr. Aaron, because I was not even thinking about it. I wasn't looking at any of this stuff thinking, what's the problem with all this? I mean, now, to be fair, if you're going to crush ice and stuff and drink it out of the frozen dude's head, don't use apple juice because people get definitely the wrong impression. So there you go.
I just
oh my god, I love it. Hang on, just quickly. Christy, yeah, welcome to the Madhouse. Yeah, exactly right. It may be mad, but people just want to stick around and just see how mad it's going to get. So there you go. Anyway, so there you go, dude. You've clearly got a couple of. You're a bit warped.
I just want to point out, none of this is me. This is all the vial.
True. That is very. Speaking of which. Yeah, hang on, we just lost him. There is the vial. There we go. Double violation. Oh, jeez.
Isn't his favourite album the Beatles' Revolter?
Oh, my goodness gracious, mate. All right, so, yes, hang on. It's mad but fun. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you're right, Christy. It is mad but fun. Very, very cool. All right, let's move on.
Gillian, it doesn't get any better. So if you didn't like your first 2 minutes here.
I love the double entendre. It was a surprisingly tasteful start. Very, very good. Well done. So, yes.
Yeah, that's called the sucker punch, where we reel you in and then we go to lower depths than ever before. Now, here's a really another really interesting item. I don't know if this has taken on so much over here where we don't tend to celebrate Halloween as much, but it is costumes for dogs. Now, again, we've gone for the frozen ones, and up the top you can see you can make your dogs look quite attractive for Halloween. They can be Olaf or some of the Disney frozen princesses, and there's Mickey and Minnie and some of the others from the range. Now, whoever did this thinks it's a great idea until you actually put it on your dog. And if you have a look down the bottom there, Olaf is looking quite like a hobo, really. Obviously, a lot of dogs you would put this on, and the first thing they try to do is rip it to shreds and rip it off. So you've got a lot of these hobo-like dogs walking around with semi-Disney costumes on them. It actually looks to me like Olaf is eating a dog, and that poor dog is trying to get out of his mouth, especially in the last picture there. So not one of those things you'd really want your kids to witness.
Do you ever see, because you can, as you said, get a lot of costumes for dogs, and you put them on the dog, and you look at the dog, and you, oh, how cute he is. You take the photo, and you look at the dog's expression, and the dog is just like, I am so embarrassed. Yes. I would want to be somewhere else. Yes.
Well, look,
I love it. Rip it off the dog. Very good.
Luke is speechless. Luke, I think, is our youngest regular viewer here. Luke, what do you think of the Vile file? Are you horrified by everything here, or do you enjoy it?
And if he was watching the thing only a couple of weeks ago, this is not going to be anything to him. So there you go. But oh my goodness, that is just grouse. Very, very cool. Yes, poor old woofers, eh? Yes.
Now this is sweet. I mean, the Vile obviously has a bit of a sweet tooth, and he decided to get some Pez sets, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So these Pez sets are pretty impressive because, as everybody knows with Pez, you load them up with the Pez, which is usually a pink color, and then you flip back the head and you get a delicious piece of candy coming out that you can grab and eat. Or some people just collect Pez sets because they collect Pez, not because they eat them. I've still got Star Wars ones from 20 years ago that have got out-of-date Pez in that I'm never going to open. But this is just a nice set of Snow White and the Seven Dwarf Pez from Disneyland, right, Dags? Nothing wrong with any of this here, right?
No.
Except the geniuses at Disney decided, instead of the Pez coming out from the dwarfs' heads, when you push back on the dwarfs' Pez, it comes out from just below the belt.
So there's a lot of jokes there, right?
There's a lot to unpack here. How do you eat your Pez? Do you just pull it out of their pants, or do you just put the Pez dispenser up to your face and grab it with your teeth?
See, even I wasn't going to say that. That's the last thing you want to do. And you just say, you get your kid brother, for example, and you just hold it just out of his reach, his tongue. So, and what I think is really interesting, you've got the Disney princesses, the modern Pez versions up the top there, discussing the Seven Dwarfs and their inappropriate display. But then you get the old version of Snow White Pez that's more collectible. And I tell you what, she's like, That is just unbelievable. Yeah, right. Cinderella. Hang on. Sorry, Cinderella once in as well. All I could think of was that classic joke. Some days I wake up grumpy. Other days I let her sleep in. Well,
the other thing on this page that I couldn't believe Disney did, but it's a licensed product. There is a little statue up the top there, and it's called Dirty Snow. And there was apparently a series of tattoo art of Disney princesses, and they were all in various states of undress. And then someone smart enough to license that art and make mini busts off of them. So you've got like Snow White there, and she's sort of being undressed by the forest creatures. And this is a Disney licensed thing. And all I could do was put Dopey with the stars, like the diamonds in his eyes, staring at her next to her.
All I can think of is if you get the Pez that comes out and you didn't want it, you try and push it back in, and then it still pops out and you push it back in. Anyway, it's a tad wrong, isn't it? But,
if you do that, you can't do that. That all the dwarfs would be grumpy then.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, the question you've got to worry about, who's happy, and let's move on, shall we? Anyway, so what do we think about all of these particular items, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I think that means that, again, the vial has been in Disneyland and all of those items are well and truly violated.
They are indeed. Look at that. Absolutely fantastic. Oh, yeah. And you're right, Thomas. It's depravity at its best, eh? So, absolutely love it. That is just so wrong on so many levels. And you're right. These are all merchandise licensed items too. So, yeah, right, Joe. It might be filthy, but you can't help it. What else are you going to think if you have to take a lolly out of?
Filthy is the 8th dwarf that they had to cut out of the movie.
And you're right, Mr. Joel. It is definitely vile. There you go. All right, so we need to move on. We're actually we're heading sort of on schedule, and it's up to our famous this section. Ooh, baby, do you know that's what... All right, so we've got people who are joining us tonight who probably haven't seen this show before and don't have any idea as to what's going on. The idea is we're going to be showing you some eBay items that have sold, and what you need to do without Googling and without like ringing up a friend or anything and without cheating, just let out your thoughts as to how much these items are sold for. And you wouldn't believe what the topic is tonight. What is it, Aaron?
Well, we could have changed the title. It could have been Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, or Money, 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 because one of the things that's happened this week is, well, the last couple of weeks, is Abba is back. And when Abba makes a comeback like this, all these items that previously were going for very little on eBay have suddenly taken a price hike. So this week, because we're doing Empire later, we're taking you back to the 80s and we're looking at Abba merchandise.
So the thing I can't work out just quickly is that I understand that they got together, they've done the music and all the rest of it, but I don't get the idea of doing the digital recreations, the de-aging of the people. It's like, that's pointless. I mean, you still got the uncanny valley thing going on. It's like you're looking at a CG video game. It's just like that. Don't even bother. If you're not going to show them as they are, just do the music and forget the video side. So anyway, that's my point. So what do you want to say about this?
Well, if you've got your ABBA dolls, you want to be able to dress them in all the different ABBA outfits from different music videos and concerts and live performances. And so when you bought your ABBA dolls, these are by Matchbox actually, you could go and buy replacement costumes so you could change their clothes, put different clothes on. Now, usually with these kind of lines, you'll buy the doll and all the other accessories, aren't as popular because you've got the doll and kids don't have to get everything else to dress it in different ways, which means 30, 40 years later, these are often harder to find than the dolls. So how much do we think a replacement pair of Adderderps would go for?
Yes, and you do wonder how much fun they had undressing all their dolls. All right, so let's go. Joshua said 100. Joel's at 722. Gavin's at 5,000. Oh, God, that's optimism for you. Jared's at 71. Thomas is at, I think it's 5 cents. He's obviously not an Abba fan. Where are we? Gillian's at 862. Ange's at 444. Colin's at 155. Carol's at 250. 145 for Mick. Luke's at 870. Rob is at 350. Phil's at 100. 73 for the violating Emirates at 73. And Emily, good to see Emily again after a bit of a spell at 400. So there you go. So I find it's kind of ironic. A lot of people go, oh, bloody Abba, who gives a shit about Abba? But deep down, they actually quite like their music. I certainly do. So there you go. And good old Greg's dropped his $2 on this one, which is absolutely fantastic. All right, so it's Matchbox doll clothes, unused from 1977. It's Frida's outfit, which is absolutely awesome. And the price it went for 8 bids, so clearly there's a bit of interest in this, went for a whopping $630 effing dollars. What's the deal with that? What are you going to say about that, old son?
I think if I had $630, I could go and buy myself a couple of nice sets of clothes and not dolls for Abba. But there you go. Obviously, because of the resurgence at the moment, what I actually noticed when I researched the stuff this week, if you went back 2 months, you could have bought a whole lot of ABBA stuff, chucked it on eBay and tripled your money. And that just shows you the ups and downs of current trends. But I'm not surprised. ABBA is popular at the moment. Will all of this week's items be surprisingly expensive, or will we have slipped in some turkeys? What do you think, Bags?
I don't know what else to say about that. Some turkeys. I love it. I think Joel is at close as at 722. No one is actually close. So they're all sort of way under or way over. But off the top of my head, I'm just going to give it to Joel because I can. Oh, hang on. Where are we? Yes. But I got to admit, it's kind of insane, isn't it? I mean, yeah. So even Jared said that Joel got it. So well done. But I mean, that's a lot, isn't it? I mean, if you showed somebody this item and said, I paid $630 for that, they'd be going, oh, mate, what is wrong with you? So with that in mind, we're still like, a bit of Mamma Mia action. Let's move on. Oh, check it out.
Now, this is a retro Abba collection, so it's not anything in particular. It's someone has sold their entire Abba collection as sort of one group of in one auction, where you've got a group of merchandise that someone's bunched together, and you've got some tour programs and you've got some books. It looks like there's a jigsaw there, some posters, an album or two. So it's just a nice 70s collection of Abba. And you can tell there's a lot there because they put heaps in capitals at the end of the auction. So obviously this is going to go for a fortune.
Can heaps. Remember too, fans, it does actually say that it looks like it's Australian. So overseas, now whether it be the American market or not, definitely in Sweden, you never know. It could be a bit of value. Oh, look at some of the prices that are coming through. People are just going completely nuts. All right, so Colin has kicked off with 200. Jared is at 450. Phil has gone for $1,000. Gavin, mate, nearly $8,000. Holy guac! I tell you what, if this sold for $8,000, you'd be going, "What? I'll invent Abba crap just to sell it." Ange is at 444. Natasha and the little dude is at we'll say 30. Mick's at 400. Joshua's at 1,200. Emily's at 850. Thomas is at 1,200. Carol's at $3,500. Bloody hell! Jillian, good to see Jillian's getting into the show, which is awesome. 1,240. Rob is at 400. Joel is at 700. Violating Abba once again, as you've got to do, is at 475. So that's where we're at. Karachi Retro Abba, Australian 70s programs, posters, clippings, and photos. And there's, as you said, there's heaps, not just heaps, but Ken heaps. So yes, very, 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 very cool. All right, so what do we reckon they all went for? They went for a whopping, look at that, there was 6 bids. So once again, there was a bit of competition on this. $485, and you're not going to believe it. Violating it, you got it right down with $10 to spare. I love it.
Now, the crazy thing about that, if they had separated that up, that Abba Australia book there was constantly going for about $500 just by itself.
How much?
500.
Oh, jeez Louise, that's just crazy. Yeah, you're right, Colin. It is a total waste of money. Oh, my goodness gracious, man, that's insane. But I agree, and Aaron's like hit the nail on the head here. When something is in vogue, it's like property. Sell, because it's current, it's topical. 1 year from today, half this stuff will be worthless. Well, not will, the price will have dropped. So, yeah, absolutely insane. But that's crazy, isn't it? So, but yeah, $500 for same. Yeah, I love it. Rob said the vial is the dancing queen. I love that. And believe me, when the vial dances, that's when you know you're getting violated. So.
So here's another cool album, Amazing Abba Fan Collection. So it's the same kind of thing as before. Someone has put, there's an Abba bag, a couple of Abba towels. Again, there was some posters and some tour books and a couple of albums. This one, I think they did a mistake where they put the individual item as the main photo and left all the extra items in different photos. If you're ever going to sell a group of stuff, make sure you put all the stuff in the first photo so people know how much they're bidding on. Otherwise, people miss the other things and think they're just bidding on a bag, which the B has been spelt wrong. It's wrong around the wrong way.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do that in the font, but yeah, you are right. Very, very cool. All right, so there we go. All right, Carol's at 1,200. Oh, Andrew's giving me all the fours. 753 for Gavin. Luke is at 285. Luke, we wouldn't even know who Abba is. 670 for Jared. It was like long before Luke came on the scene. Colin's at 500. Mick is at 250. Good to see Mick. 300 at Joshua. Joel had the Abba bag. Oh, there you go, dude. Well done. Emily's at 310. Joel said 800. Glenn, good to see Glenn joining us from YouTube, is at 300. Jillian, 126, so she's not very optimistic about this. And Thomas has said 700, and Rob is at 250. Yes. I mean, and of course, violating the bag is at the vial at 555. Oh, Natasha's gone for the $4 for the little. Oh, that's as cheapskate as you get. And Phil has said 500. And Christy, it's all on a burner. Oh, jeez. Cop that. Oh my goodness gracious me! That's what yeah, take a serve, Abba. Very very cool. All right, so it's an amazing. It's not just an Abba fan collection; it's amazing. So there you go. And Luke does love his 70s and 80s. Well done to you. And sorry, Jimmy's just joined us right at the very end at 750. So well done, Jimmy. If you get this, you just popped in at the last moment. You never know. 6 bids. We've seen what's happened so far. So the price went for a whopping 2,000 effing dollars. What the hell's the deal with that?
Well, obviously they need to keep the bag to keep all their money in for that one. But yeah, it just shows you 2 massive Abba collections, a lot of the same thing in each one, and one of them went for 4 times the price of the other.
Well, I'll tell you who didn't get it. Tasha certainly didn't get it for $4, and Christy didn't get it for $1 to burn it all. Someone's walked out. No one is relative. I have to pick the highest one here. I think even Angie's 444s didn't cut the mustard. I think it's Carol actually at 1,200. She's still about nearly $900 short. But how about that? Isn't that insane?
We all know who didn't get it, and that's Greg King. But yeah, it is insane. Abba is back at the moment, and again, like I said, all of this stuff. Not so long ago, you could pick up for nothing, but, saturation on YouTube and the media, and suddenly everyone's nostalgia for Abba has pushed the prices through the roof.
Yeah, I tell you what. You know what? Don't forget the kids. The winner takes it all. Oh my God, isn't that even? Oh wow, that's mind blowing. And once again, if you showed this to someone, said I paid $2,000 for that, they're going, yep, off you need to go to the psychiatrist. That's just crazy. But good on them. And you're right. Yeah, they'll try and resell it again a couple of years later when the thing is all passe and they won't get any buyers at all. All right, 4th item. There we go. Sock it to me, Abba.
Well, this is one of those interesting items that I had no idea what this would go for. Abba Socks, and these are genuine Abba Socks from the late 70s, officially produced and licensed. You could slip your foot into the. I won't go there. There's the band on your socks.
They are the socks that go on your feet. All right, and just for anybody out there, especially the blokes, they go on your feet.
Or your nose if you're cold.
Actually, Carol said she'd actually like the bag. Oh, well, there you go for $2,000. Very, very cool. All right, that's just crazy. So socks. Yeah, I can't think of any funny jokes to go with that, but yes, let's move on.
I like the title of the auction, just Abba Socks.
You can't get more boring than that, eh? And if they sold for thousands of dollars, you're thinking, see, who needs really expensive marketing titles? Just 2 words will do it every single day of the week. All right, Angie's gone for the 4s. Gavin's 375. Fucking dog's vomit. Oh, jeepers creepers. Where are we? 500 for Phil. Natasha and the little dude is at 40. Carol had a pair of these. You can buy them again. How good is that? Yes. Mika said 180. Yes, condition is used. So make of that. We could have holes in the heels and whatever.
You know what that means? It means they are Carol's.
You never know. And if you dance around the house like you did, like a risky business, you really are a dancing queen. So how good is that? Joel said 70.22. Emily's at 30. Thomas is at $6.50. Carol's at $300. Joshua's at $100 each. So Jared, look at this, $1,200 for him. Greg King, $1 each. Good old Greg never lets me down. Lucas at 1,000. Collins at 120. Jimmy is at 35. Good on you, Jimmy. Rob is at 10. Glenn from YouTube is at 200. Julian, I'm sorry you clarified that, Julian, because I wasn't entirely sure what you were trying to say. 86, thank you. Violating these socks. Sock it to me, exactly right. 170 for the vial. Jess is at 130. Have a tube sock violated. Very, very, very good. I'll give you some socks after midnight. Yeah, I know. It's grouse, isn't it, eh? So, yes, you need to get hang on, Carol, you need to get your socks back. Well, depending on how much they sold for, you may be wondering, it wasn't worth getting rid of them in the first place. So, all right. So there you go. Some Abba socks. That's all it says they're used. We have no idea what the details are. There's some photos, obviously. So what do you reckon they went for? They went for a whopping $255 for a pair.
So what that says to me is I should go be printing Abba on my old socks and putting them on eBay.
That is, for a pair of frigging socks, that is bullshit.
And it looks like those socks, one of them, the elastic is still okay, and the other one, the elastic's gone because the tops of them are totally different shapes. So Yep. So someone must have really had a sock-shaped hole in their Abba collection, because there was a few bids on that one, and an old pair of socks went for $255.
You wouldn't believe this. Carol said 300, and Glenn said 200, but because it's the $5 over, it goes back to Carol at 300. I don't think anybody else has got it. So you have to cop up $45 there, Carol. But I think you may have it. You can put them in your bag and have a whale of a time. So how good is that? So
there you go. You got your socks back.
what a rip-off. It's not a rip-off. People actually chose to pay this amount. That's the problem. So, it's just insane. Yeah, it's like, ooh, did I win? Everybody's a winner in this show. What can I say? Oh, my goodness gracious me. All right, so we've had all the really cool Abba stuff, right? And then there's obviously a lot of ultra rare collectibles out there. Now, this next one coming up, you have to ask yourself, do you have this in your collection? And if you do, what do you reckon this would be worth?
So I think this must be one of the rarest things of all. It's the Norman Gunston Salute to Abba 7-inch single. Now, I managed a record shop for years and years, and I never saw this one, and I saw some rare Abba stuff. But that said, who collects Norman Gunston anymore? So there we go. And it's on the rare Lamington record label, which, again, must be a pretty unique label, because I don't remember much stuff coming through on that one. Do you remember this song when it came out?
No, and I'm just going to clarify, Mick, Mick, you're close, but not close enough. It was Little Aussie Bleeder, not Great Aussie Bleeder. So There you go.
Well, I do remember his I Am Marching in the Kiss Army song, and I remember seeing it on Countdown. And then he did the Carnal Chameleon for Boy George, but I do not remember the ABBA anthem. So
he did actually do an Empire Strikes Back thing when he was doing Norm Drum. Remember that?
Yes.
So he did reference the Empire Strikes Back on that. So, but yeah, I've never heard of the ABBA thing. So, how's this? Is just like, is there any Norman Gunston merchandise out there? That's the question you got to ask yourself. So
yes,
yeah.
So I don't know. There is one or two little things, but you don't see much. So this straddles two giants of popular culture, Norman Gunston and ABBA. So surely there's going to be, one bid. Let's see what it went for. Okay. So Gavin has said 57. You can buy a lot of Normans for that. Andrew said $2. He's taking a leaf out of Greg's book. Now, Natasha and the little dude, Natasha probably wouldn't even know who Norman Gunston is. And you know what? You're not missing out on anything, believe me. 500 for Phil. Geez, he's optimistic, isn't he? Eh? So, and you're right, Jillian. At the time, Norman Gunston was awesome. That was the thing. When he interviewed people, he was just hysterical. Nobody knew what to make of him. Carol said 500. Emily's at 150. Jared's at $1. Jess is at 300. Violating Norman Gunston is a vile at $10. You're right, Greg, $2, but it's actually a drink coaster. Hang on, he's got beer. He's got beer. Oh, tears rolling down his cheeks. But our job is not to stop. We just keep on going. Joel said $1. Carol said 550. Joshua said 2. Rob has said 50 cents. Jillian's at 285. Bloody hell. 3,000 for Thomas. Surely, Thomas, you can't be serious. Who would pay $3,000 for a bloody Norman Gunston record? Luke is at 1,000. He was great at bleeding just a little. Remember, he used to always have the shaving marks, like he'd cut himself shaving and put the tissue paper on them. There's all these comments about Norman Gunston. Where are we? Colin said 55, Mick said 25, Jared said 99 cents, Jimmy said 300, Glenn has said 200, and Phil said he reckons it went for 99 cents. So there you go. You're right. Natasha's got no idea who he is. Believe me, I don't even think you can even think of an English equivalent. So, all right. So the Norman Gunston Salute to ABBA. It must have been the top of people's vinyl collections for decades. What do you reckon it went for? Lamington Records. That alone means it must be worth something. It went for a whopping $1.95. Oh gosh. I guess the nostalgia for Norman Gunston isn't there as much as maybe he should come back with a digital avatar, and then his record would go for a lot on eBay.
I'll tell you who didn't get it. Thomas didn't get it at 3,000. That's for sure. I have to look. There's a lot of people said $2, and I think anybody's got. Hang on, someone said $1.99. They may just get it, I think. I have to look. So it's a long list of people here. So
Jared said 99 cents.
No, that's all right. No, I've got $2 from a few people, like Joshua said too. But I could have sworn someone said $1.99. If that's the case, then whoever did that. I thought it was
If
Joel.
$2 wins, it means we just have to break it up into pieces and send a piece to each person who said $2.
Yeah, I know. Joel said $1. So yeah, okay. So whoever said $2, all you $2 people, that includes. I didn't. Greg put one in, but yeah, how about that? So what an absolute classic. So the fact that someone even went to the trouble of putting that on for sale, one bid. So clearly someone thought, oh, I've got to have that. That's a must-have for the record collection. So yes, a very, very good. Oh my goodness gracious me. Anything further you want to add on about our eBays and violations and Greg Kingies before we start moving on to the most exciting part of the night?
Oh, I just think it's funny when we sort of do something outside the regular nerd fandom like Abba. No one has a clue, and you get 99 cents and $3,000 for exactly the same item. So this was a pop-free zone for once. So we managed to avoid any Abba pops or pop-related material on eBay, which I give a thumbs up.
Very good. Jillian's buggering off already. So it's Jillian's nice to have you. So I hope you come back and hope you actually return next time. So yeah, put the kids to bed. Either that or get the kids up and get them to come and join us. And Greg did say that, he was the $2 drink coaster. Absolutely fantastic. Norman did a version of Fernando. Yes, I think he did too. So
yes.
All right. Time for the serious part of the show. So we're back to our second part of our discussion from last week, which is what, Mr. Aaron?
Strawberry shortcake dolls and other dolls that smell and have sense. No, Empire Strikes Back. Everyone here's favorite movie, or everyone's favorite Star Wars movie, my favorite movie of all time. Before we get into the discussion today, I had a bit of feedback last week from various people. After the show. Yep, some people actually watch this show after we upload it. And one of our viewers from Sydney, Glenn, said he was researching the release of Empire Strikes Back in Australia, and there is really not much information that he can find online. And what were my memories and Dag's memories of the release of Empire Strikes Back? So before we go into our main program, I don't think we've discussed this before. I saw Empire Strikes Back in its original theatrical run. I didn't see it when it originally came out because, at 7, you're not like the type of person that's queuing up and getting your parents to go the first day. But I saw it in Hoyts Central, it's gone now, one of the bigger Melbourne cinemas. And this is what I remember about it. It was the last movie I saw that was a full program movie. So it had an interval, and it had the full program at the start where we got a Three Stooges short where they rewired the house as tradesmen, and you've got water coming out of the TV and the power sockets and everything. They had a mini documentary on decomposing, and it was a sped up version of a fox that just decomposed. Yep, that's the kind of thing they used to show at the cinema. And I remember the advert for it in the trailers. They showed Condorman, which came out sometime in 1981. So I don't remember any of the other trailers, but I remember seeing it and thinking, Condorman looks like a good movie. And the only thing I remember from the screening was during the Dagger Bar scenes, my brother decided he needed to go to the bathroom. And because I was 7 and he was 5, my mum wanted to drag us all out of the cinema because she didn't want to leave a 7-year-old in the cinema by herself. And I put my foot down and said, no, you can go. I'm not missing any of Empire Strikes Back. So my brother and my mum missed some of the Yoda scenes and then came back 10 minutes later. That's my memories of seeing Empire. What about you, Dags?
Well, to correct one thing, Empire is not my favorite, and New Hope is my favorite, but I would class Empire right up. So it's either one or the other for some people, like even Joel mentioned earlier. He says a New Hope, then Empire. So I agree with that. For myself, because I read the book first, even though I went through it really, really quick, because I remember last week I had a friend of mine from school steal it for me. I actually don't remember that much, but one thing I do remember, as I was walking in, a friend of mine was walking out. I go, oh, dude, I didn't realize he went and just saw the session just before me. But when the crawl started, I remember I was sitting there because in the movie you get the big Star Wars that goes back and the crawl going up. And just as the Star Wars is going back, I'm thinking, shit, I'm watching the wrong movie. They put the wrong movie on. They put the original film on. I didn't know. Yeah, you didn't think it. I was 13. You didn't know that they're going to have the same start until it said, episode 5, whatever. But there's not a lot I actually do remember about the screening because It's just one of those things that it's just sort of in my head, and it's just not there. I remember New Hope really, really well, and Return of the Jedi, but Empire is sort of just a bit furry, except for that bit where the crawl was. So, no, I can't really recall much more than that. But
and I guess
yeah, it was obviously very successful screening, that's for sure. So yeah,
it's one of those things. I don't know if anyone cares. The intermission was when Darth Vader moved the fleet out of the asteroid field to contact the Emperor. So that's when the intermission was, and I do remember that as well.
And just a joke regarding the Fox. Someone said, "What do you think? What would Mozart be? What's Mozart doing right now?" And you say, "Decomposing." Boom, tish. Yes, very, very cool. So it was a good time for everybody, and yeah, we move on. So good stuff. Hopefully, whoever that was who asked the question, that answers your question. What do you reckon?
I think it covers it. I think we've bored everyone else though. So let's get on to the toys.
Yeah, very, very cool.
So last week we ended up. Kenner, we were looking at the beginning of the Kenner releases for Empire Strikes Back. And some of the first releases that came out were the cardboard playsets. And this was purely because print material is easier to get out than plastic. So with a lot of these ones that were released early, you can see with the Rebel Command Center and the Ice Planet Hoth, they have the same base. And the base is actually from the Land of the Jawas playset, and it has just been painted. Well, it's just been molded out of white plastic instead of tan plastic to represent snow. And I didn't realize this, when it was originally out. These were hard to find in Australia, and I found at a market just the base without the background at one point. And I thought that the Sandcrawler track, because they've left the Sandcrawler tread across it, was actually one of the mini rigs that had big wheels. So I was like, oh, they really did a good job in making this sort of match up into one universe. So we've got two of the Hoth bases there and a Bespin playset, which are all quite hard to find. Bespin is probably the hardest one to find. What is interesting, and we will see with the release of the Empire Strikes Back merchandise through Kenner, they had a really fantastic marketing campaign for this, where it really catered for anyone's price tag. Because Lucasfilm had done such a great job in making the movie sort of toy-centric with all the vehicles that could be adapted, you could have someone who collected figures or collected smaller vehicles or collected play sets or collected larger vehicles, and you could all add them together to make dioramas from different scenes of the movie. So it must have been a dream franchise for Kenner to have. When we see how Batman, they were dictating what they wanted in the movies so that they could make toys, Star Wars basically was overloaded with material that they could turn into toys. So we're going to see there's a lot of toys released for Empire Strikes Back.
Question here about the Cloud City sold here in Oz. I would assume it wasn't.
It was only a Sears exclusive. The only ones I've ever seen in Australia, I've actually imported from overseas. When we were growing up, that wasn't one that was in the Kenner catalogs that you used to get with the toys. So that was a playset that I didn't know existed till basically the days of the internet. You'd see stuff in it was like the Trading Post, but it was called Toy Shop from America. And occasionally I'd see this thing that was cardboard Bespin playset, but I had no idea what it actually was. And I remember there was a toy shop called TARDIS Collectibles, and the dealer there, John Pacini, I remember he imported one, and I saw it at a record fair once, and I was blown away. There was an old Star Wars playset that I didn't know existed. Because of the internet, it's really hard for that kind of experience to happen now. But back in the 90s, that used to happen a lot. So, yeah, hard one to find.
So this was a very good series that came out, and when it came, it sort of revolutionized everything, really, when you sit and think about it. And, of course, it was Micro Machines.
Yeah, so Kenner took a gamble and changed the line. Well, they added an extra line to their toys for Empire Strikes Back, and it was a micro collection. And the micro collection was so they could do these play sets and different scenes from the Star Wars movies, but they weren't too expensive and they weren't huge. So they did go back during Empire Strikes Back and they made the Death Star from Star Wars, which is a fantastic little play set. But it just shows you how sort of made for toys that the movie was, where every single scene in this movie, because every single scene moves the movie along, just about every scene can be taken out of the movie and made a playset about. It's one of those films where there really isn't many slow parts that kids are going to get bored by. So you can take any vehicle, any scene, any character, which they did, and make a toy of, and it will generally sell pretty well. And because they did this thing where the sets were modular and the different elements could be built to them, you can get people who buy one or two for their favorite scene or want to buy everything for that entire scene and build their collection. And I think that's why by the time Empire rolled around and they had a fan base that was already collecting, a movie that was recognized as good by critics, and it was a little bit more adult than Star Wars, I think that's why Empire is so well remembered, but also has such amazing collectibles.
The TIE fighter down here, if I recall, is that the blue one where you press the back and the wings would fall apart?
Yeah, it is. And there's battle damaged. I always used to feel ripped off as a kid because you get two sets of stickers, the normal ones and the battle damaged ones, but they don't really tell you. You can't swap them around. You use one or the other. When you try to change it around, it just means both sets are ruined. So you don't get lots of good stickers.
The only thing why I was mentioning that is because I know that with the larger TIE fighters, always the wings were too small. And this was the first TIE fighter that came out where it was in perfect proportion. The solar panels were in proportion with the cockpit. And I had a friend of mine who was a modeler, and he actually got hold of one of these, and he actually fixed it up so the wings didn't fall apart and painted it all grey, and it looked spectacular. And because it was exactly the right proportions to the real thing, whereas the toy versions were always, the solar panels were too small. So they at least did that one right with this, which was very, very cool. And I do agree with you, because you could make your diorama sets and have all the play, but they're not as physically large. They were very appealing to a lot of people. So, and you're right. It started the micro vehicles, and that was all fantastic because it didn't take up a lot of space. It looked good, and you could still easily identify with what the product was. So, very cool.
Now, it was interesting. I don't know if they had an exclusive in Australia, but I remember Walton's. I don't know if you remember the old store called Walton's. They had the biggest collection of micro collection from Star Wars. And during Empire Strikes Back, I used to go in there, and it wasn't really known for toys. And I used to go in there every week and make my parents go, because they had a lot of the micro collection that the other shops didn't have. And there were a few exclusives to Australia that didn't come out as regularly overseas. There was the Millennium Falcon, and also Toll Toys printed box stuff for people who collect variants. And they were all in Walton's as far as I remember. And also you would get in the catalogues, the micro machines, it had the Death Star world was not available, and Hoth world was not available. And generally in all the other shops, they weren't available. You could only get like all of half the segments, and one segment for each one wasn't released here. They were in Walton's because I bought a couple of them, and they were the only shop I saw them in. So they must have had some parallel deal beyond Toll Toys, which were distributing them here, or bought a pallet load somewhere and got stuff that wasn't anywhere else. So if you're an Aussie collector, there's an interesting little fact for you.
Speaking of facts, Kyle's mentioned this one of how they made their sculpt them 4 times the size and reduce them. The same principle works for postage stamps. When you create a postage stamp, you paint a really, really big picture and just shrink it right down. But very, very cool.
Yeah. So there's some of the different sets there that were available in the micro collection. Interestingly enough, Kenna thought this was going to be huge for them. And as a kid, I thought they were fantastic, but they didn't have the sales for these that they expected they were going to have. So as we go through, going to show a couple of unproduced sets. Usually with unproduced stuff, it doesn't get too far down the line, and there's just sort of the unpainted prototypes. But with this, they got all the packaging ready to go. It must have been really close to pull the trigger and release more of these sets, and it didn't happen. And some of the sets that weren't produced are fantastic, so it's quite a shame, really.
A comment from Thomas about the appeal of Empire was the fact that the bad guys made you feel that they are winning. Well, one thing that Empire does have in its favour is it's completely unpredictable. If at the start of the movie you think, what's going to happen? I can predict everything that's going to happen to the end. Not a hope in hell. You're never going to guess in a million years how it's going to finish. And that, if anything, is a big tick in its box, that's for sure. So, very cool.
So here we are. Here's the some of the sets from Hoth. And again, what I was saying, there's the Hoth world there, which when they made these micro sets, you could buy all the individual components separately, or then you could buy the mega set that had them all boxed together, and often they'd have like 1 or 2 exclusive figures you couldn't get separately. I think in Australia, in all the local catalogues, it would say that they weren't available here because there was always one component. I don't know why they did that. I know that when they were releasing stuff in Australia, sometimes we didn't get the bigger items because the the postage was more and it wasn't worth selling it here and shipping it because it didn't make as much profit. But they surely could have released all the individual little ones in the smaller sets, so you could build it yourself. But there you go. That was the stuff for Hoth, and then they did a lot of the stuff for Bespin. If we go to the next slide, here is the Unproduced Dagger Bar. So pictures of this surfaced years ago, and there's pictures in different books and magazines. I've gone to a couple of different websites and found pictures from different sources. But you can see they had the concept drawings and the art, and then they have the actual prototypes ready to go. And with the figures, they've sculpted them, and because they're in lead, I guess they've made a couple of them and painted them. So they were that close to being available that there's this sort of evidence of what they were going to be. Now, one of the things that it has happened with some of the figures, it hasn't happened with these. I'm surprised that Hasbro hasn't done the unproduced range and started releasing prototype like as real products these days, you know, in the retro packaging with, you know, like a retro thing on go, like unproduced prototype, stuff like that. So I don't know if that's cheap because they've got the old hard copies, or if it costs them a lot and they've got to do it all again. But I think that's something especially vintage collectors would love.
Question here from Gavin about whether there was ever a game or a play set about escaping the space slug. I'm going to assume there wasn't.
There has been recently a couple of toys that depict it. There wasn't a game. There was Escape the Sarlacc Pit that we'll look at Return of the Jedi later that they did do though. They could have done Escape the Space Slug. That would have been pretty cool.
Cool.
And here is some of the unreleased stuff from the Bespin world and from Hoth. You've got the detention center, which would have been pretty cool add-on to the play set. But I think the best unproduced micro set was the Back to Tank with Luke, where you had different characters, FX7 and 21B. It's an interesting set that adds on to the play set, and it's something that they really didn't do again until the modern Power of the Force stuff that Hasbro did years later. I think that's a fantastic set, and I think that would have been really cool if they'd released it, but obviously the demand wasn't there. And it might not have been that the kids didn't want it. It might have been that the toy shops that were selling it, it didn't sell as well, so they didn't pre-order it. And if there's not enough pre-orders, the product doesn't go into production.
So cop this one, right? This first time I really looked at this picture. Up the top here, Bespin torture chamber action play set. What's wrong with that description? It's like friggin'.
Well, yes, there's a lot of debate on stuff like that. You know, they had to the Death Squad commander and all these other things that they had to change.
Death can interpret many different forms, right? But the word torture only means one thing, right? And torture chamber only means one thing. So to have an action play set for it, I mean, that's just that's not like a death is a title, right? I'm a Death Squad commander. It doesn't mean you're actually going around killing people or you're the Grim Reaper. But I thought, who would call it that? It's like friggin' out. And it wasn't a torture chamber at all. It was just in a room. They used a scan grid on Han Solo, and that was it. Who would market a toy like that? That would have to be that is definitely violated. What do you reckon, kids?
Yeah. Michael's already commenting on it and saying, "What do you make weird multicolored prototype retro Star Wars figures?" Yeah, I would much prefer some of this came out than some of those sort of weird things. But I think it's for cheapness, because if they've already got a Boba Fett mold, they can just inject different color plastic into it, and you've got a prototype figure limited edition. But something like that probably takes a bit more to get off the ground. But I'd love to see that stuff. It just shows the appeal of nostalgia from things from your youth.
Now, I remember when these things were about to show you came out, and it was like straight away you go, where the friggin' hell were these in the movies?
So we're starting at the small stuff and we're getting bigger and bigger. Now, the story behind these is there was action figures and then there were ships that were about $20, but Kenner wanted to market something that was in between sort of more pocket money.
Hang on. I'm just going to cut you off. Thomas has said, what about Skeletor's Castle, one big cage torture? But it didn't say that on the box, right? And it didn't say it was an action play set. So, you know, it's not like saying, it's for children. Oh, by the way, we're going to use a phrase which clearly has all these negative connotations associated with it. So the fact that they use the term on the box, that's what I was questioning, not what would actually happen in the play set. So, sorry, I got to cut you off, but I wanted to clarify that. Go on.
Now, the brief for these was apparently to design vehicles that looked like they were from the Star Wars universe and they were just off frame. And I think that's a really cool brief because obviously toy designers have a really good ideas. Now, with the mini rigs, some of them were fantastic and some of them were crap. The one that was the droid carrier, which is up in the top right there, is the one that I count as crap, where you can just put droids in it and it really does nothing. It doesn't have wheels or anything. And then the one that I think is fantastic is the Cap 2, where in my imagination, that was Bosk's like mobile tank that he would go around and get bounties in. And I would love for that to turn up in The Mandalorian with Bosk or something new, because one of the things we've seen with some of the mini rigs that they made, I guess the people who make the current Star Wars grew up with them and they love them so much that they've gone and stuck them in some of the movies. So the mini rigs really did have great appeal to kids. And you can see there, that's an American ad, but they were $5.99. So the toys were generally, the figures were generally $1.99 or $2.99. So this was the price of 2 figures and you got a vehicle. So it was quite good. And the thing about mini rigs, if you think about it, what's a mini rig? It covers everything. You can do, you know, the vehicle energizer. You can do little mini tanks. You can do tripod guns, and mini rig covers it all. I've got to say, Dags, I was thinking about it. A lot of my vocabulary, I know because of Star Wars. I didn't know what a bounty hunter was until Empire Strikes Back, and mini rigs and stuff like that. I learnt because I was into the toy. I do remember reading Doctor Who and being into Star Wars. Broadened my vocabulary. Okay, you see, it hampered my vocabulary. But it is one of those things that not a lot of people realise when, you know, you've got a little kid and they start talking about all these different things from science fiction. It is good that some of these things like are more than just the dollar signs.
Yeah, everything I learned from Star Wars, and that's actually some stuff you can read about that online, which is kind of funny in science fiction. And in fact, the first time I ever said the word rendezvous was actually in the Empire Strikes Back novelization, because me being a kid, rendezvous, what the hell is that? So, yeah, French words, weren't my forte, but yes. But I agree with you. You can learn a lot from watching science fiction movies. Yes, very, very cool.
And here I've kind of done like one slide more on the Cap 2 vehicle, which was Bosk's one-man sort of protection, survival, all-purpose suit. Now, the thing for this was, though, I saw pictures of this before I saw the movie, and I don't know if you've noticed the color codes for a lot of the stuff. The blue backgrounds are Hoth, the pink and red backgrounds are Bespin. So I saw this toy with the pink and red background, and all the other Bespin stuff was kind of from there, with Darth Vader and Stormtroopers, and I was so sure that Bosk was going to turn up on Bespin, like with this bounty hunter contraption, especially when they sent all the bounty hunters out to find people. The other thing that really really confused me was I think it was from England, because my nan was from England and she used to send me all these comics and stuff, and they had a mail away. It must have been a Pally Toys one for the new secret figure from the Star Wars movie, soon to be a major part in the new Star Wars movie. And it wasn't the Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett mail away. I got this Bosk figure, and because the toy had told me soon to be a major part of the new Star Wars movie, I'm waiting for this guy to turn up the whole movie, and he does, and he goes gurgle gurgle, and that's it. So that was a bit disappointing. I was thinking this huge big mech walking thing and this giant lizard that looked like the Gorn from Star Trek, but there was so much else going on in Empire, it didn't disappoint me too much.
There you go. Yeah, the victim of dodgy marketing. Joel did like them, even though as a kid didn't know where they were in the movie. I didn't. I wasn't sold straight away. As soon as I saw them, I go, they're not in the film, not interested. So on screen, if it's not on screen, it means nothing. So, but as you said, you're right. It did work for kids, and of course, it worked for kids' budgets. And for parents who didn't have a lot of money, who couldn't afford the big ass stuff, they got the little stuff instead, and it was just as good. So it was very, very clever, very, very a smart move.
They were the gateway vehicles to bigger things. And here's what I was talking about with mini rig can really encompass a lot of different things, just not the vehicles. These were the ones when I was growing up I enjoyed more because they were actually in the movies. So you've got the laser cannon from the Hoth trenches, and you've got the tripod cannon that the snowtroopers run in and assemble. And of course you've got the vehicle maintenance energizer, which kind of looks like some of the stuff in the background that energizes the vehicles. And you've you've got the Hydra spanners and stuff that come with it that are mentioned in the movie too. So I thought these were pretty cool items when they came out. And again, they were cheap, and I remember absolutely loving them. I loved the radar cannon, you pushed a button and it blew up, and I loved that the tripod cannon, when you moved it, it made a clicking sound. So what a different world we live in, where that satisfied me as a kid, whereas now if you gave a kid something that clicked when you turned it around, they'd probably throw it over their shoulder and goes, where's the screen and where do the batteries go? So
I tell you what, true words were never spoken. That's pretty scary stuff.
And so here's some of the other prototypes that have turned up the top there. There's a few of the prototypes, and what is interesting, it almost looks like there's the one that turned into the MTV7 almost looks like a muscle bike kind of thing with the huge wheels, and the prototypes are kind of stolen and made out of technical Lego. So it really shows you how they were cobbled together. And there's a couple of things here that I think that are interesting. The first mini rig I bought was the INT4, because on the pack it had a picture of it sitting inside the AT-AT, and the AT-AT is my favorite vehicle from Star Wars, and I couldn't afford one, so I bought this just because it had the picture of it sitting inside. But again, it goes to show how much they thought about what they were doing with the toys, where they made a mini rig that would fit inside a larger vehicle. They didn't have to do that from the brief, but the toy designers were smart enough to actually go with that. And then up the top, you've got the one that's the MLC, and they used that in some of the comics back in the 80s as well. So they did sort of have that linked universe between the different franchise owners. So they'd say, here are the toys, send them to Marvel. We can put some of them in the comics and sort of cross-promote. So that's all very cool.
The only thing I got frustrated with was all the terminology, like you said, your NT4s and your MTV, the music television, long before music television, and all these crazy names. It's just like you couldn't remember what they all were. Someone says, "Have you got a PT, whatever?" What do you go? What the bloody hell is one of those?
Well, one's the Methodist Lady College, and you've got the music television. So yeah. I don't know if I know they were all based on acronyms, but yeah, you think some of them were having a joke when they put these names together, I'm sure.
You are right. If you Gavin, if the MTV7, if you push it in the middle of the wing, the legs for whatever reason do spread like that. So make of that what you will. I never got the idea as to what the thing was, but yeah. Anyway, very cool.
And of course, we got with Empire Strikes Back a whole new range of figures, and I don't know if it was because they kept a lot of the movie secret from Kenner, or because Kenner just wanted to produce anything. But with the Star Wars figures, they produced 21 that were pretty much main characters or popular characters. The Cantina aliens were very, very popular with kids at the time. It's hard to believe now. People were blown away by that sequence because you'd never seen so many aliens in one scene before. But with
unless you went to a Doctor Who fan club meeting. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Sorry, Phil. Mate, there's alien. I'll tell you what, it's like, oh my God, like, horrible.
With the Empire Strikes Back, though, there were ones there's some absolutely fantastic ones released, and then there's sort of two Best Ben security guards. And I do wonder, if there had been more Best Ben sets produced, that might have been a good idea. But I do remember peg warmers, and this is one of the things we haven't talked about. With Star Wars, I don't remember there being peg warmers. With Empire Strikes Back, I wanted a snowtrooper. I wanted a stormtrooper. And here's a sad story. My parents, for Christmas one year, bought me a Best Ben security guard because I wanted a stormtrooper, and they couldn't get one. But the Best Ben security guard has a stormtrooper in the picture on the background. And so they said, we couldn't get you a stormtrooper, son. So we got you this because at least it's got a little picture of one in the background. And I was wrapped. So there you go. But I do remember going along and wanting Boba Fett, and there was all these Labots and all these Landos was another one I remember being everywhere, and the Best Ben security guards. I remember a lot of Ugnaughts were everywhere as well. So there were some peg warmers by this stage, and Star Wars was one of these franchises at that point. Me and my brother wanted the set, but you're obviously going to want the bounty hunters and the main characters before you get the guy standing up the back in Best Ben.
Yeah, the other thing that we discovered too is that they were re-releasing figures from the first movie in packaging for the second movie, even if the characters didn't appear in the first movie. I was thinking, hang on, what's the deal with that? So, you get the Death Squad commander who was clearly a character in the New Hope, or in Jawas, and you go, there's no Jawas in the Empire Strikes Back. Why is there a Jawa and an Empire card? And
Well,
Yes.
that's the thing. Some of the earlier advertising we looked at last week had the dewbacks on Hoth attacking the Hoth Imperial base, which was another one of those things that would have confused some kids at the time because they came out before the movie. Kenner are kind of a genius here. I don't know many toy lines that have done this. For the entire run of Star Wars, they kept the entire line of figures available. So there were a couple that weren't. The original R2-D2 was replaced and the original C-3PO. But in general, every single figure that was available for Star Wars in 77, 78 was still available when the line was on its last legs, sort of in 1985. Some of them were harder to find because obviously they didn't reissue the older ones as much as they put in the case of the newer ones. But what that meant, if you were a kid that started collecting when Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi came out, and you had a favorite figure from the older movies, you could still find it. Toy lines these days, they're not so much into keeping everything available. They want to sell as much as they can in the first month and then move on to the next wave of figures where they sell as much as they can. And it's very rare for figures to be reissued or come back. Even in the 80s, I remember collecting He-Man stuff. And it was a shock for me when a couple of years after you couldn't get them anymore, Faker came back and some of the old classics came back and they reissued them. Star Wars were really good for collectors because you could get most of the figures the entire time that the first three movies were in the cinemas.
I love the fact that with the figures, without anybody realizing it at the time, that the back of the card actually became more important than the front of the card, and the term like 12 back over here and you got 32 figures. You remember the back in the days, there was only 32 figures to buy, and you got the 41 back over here and all the rest of it. And that's the identifying mark for the actual product. So nobody knew at the time that the back was actually, in a lot of ways, going to be more important than the front. So that was going to denote its value. Fancy that.
And yeah, the back of the card determines what that actual figure is worth. And sometimes it's not the earlier versions that are the rarest. It might be the later ones that have a variant or have a sticker on or something like that. And we talked about it last week. The other genius thing was it meant if you collect Star Wars and they had the entire range on the back of the card, you could cross out all the ones you had and give it to an aunt or uncle so they could go to the shops and know that they were getting you ones that you didn't already have for birthdays and Christmas and things like that. Now, it's too hard. We don't have enough time to look at every single Star Wars figure that came out for the Empire range. So like we did with Star Wars, I'm looking at some of the rarer variants in the multi-packs that some we got locally and some I didn't know again until the days of the internet. And some of these have gone through the roof price-wise because these were often produced to clear figures. So even though it was a good deal, they were just getting stock out as quick as they could. So they weren't available a lot. They'd often do a wave of them, sell them cheap, and they'd only be available for sort of one catalogue. I remember with the 3-packs in Australia for the Star Wars ones and the Empire ones, I only saw them available for about 2 weeks at Myer. The first ones that came out, my brother and I were allowed to get one each. The second ones, my parents were like, nah, and then we never ever saw them again. So these ones are really highly desirable on the secondary market now. And there are still some weird multi-figure sets that turn up overseas and in different places that, if someone thinks they've got everything and then like a mail-away box turns up like those white ones that have multi-packs in, and it was like a regional mail-away for some department store or often Sears in Canada or something like that. So even when you were in America collecting everything, unless you lived close to the border or knew someone in Canada, you couldn't get these sets. And one of the interesting phenomenons of the internet, when it first came out and you could buy stuff, prices actually went down because before the internet, it was impossible to get stuff from overseas. So the price you bought something for in Australia was the price the dealer put on it because there was no other way to get it. Then the internet came along and suddenly people were like, someone in Melbourne's got this for $200, but they're selling for $20 in the US. So it did cause a mini collapse. The thing with Star Wars, it's had such long collecting legs that even though there was a surplus of loose figures and different figures for a long time, that is well and truly gone now, and the prices are still marching upwards on a lot of this stuff. So if you ever go to a fair or you're in a jumble sale or you see a multi-figure set, the classic stuff, and it's a reasonable price, they would be the ones I would grab.
So actually, Kyle, we brought this up in a previous episode, like months ago, about the stores, about how we actually found, or actually Aaron found, actual catalogs for Maltons back in the day, where these things were available, the multi-figure sets, and yeah, $6 at the time. And of course, most of us all thought we've already got the damn things. Why do we need to buy them again? Who knew, eh? So yeah, and just as the example I was telling you about, like you got R5D4 down here in an Empire Strikes Back packet. He's like, yeah, that dude wasn't in the movie. So yeah, they clearly needed to get rid of him. So there you go.
Yeah. And then, of course, if you've got the figures, one of the cheap things they kind of knocked out was the carry cases and the stands. And these are some of the action figure stands. And again, the mail-away one at the top there for Star Wars was repurposed for Empire Strikes Back, and came out in a box in different places, not everywhere. And the famous ones that we could get here and I thought were pretty cool were the L-shaped modular ones that were basically two L-shaped pieces of plastic that you could put your figures in, and then you got different dioramas in the background, so you could display your figures with dioramas. And this is very interesting, that is a kind of a Star Wars thing. Now as collectors, a lot of adults do dioramas with backgrounds and amazing stuff. It was quite unusual back in those days for companies to be like aiming a product that wasn't to play with your figures, it was to display them. But Star Wars did that right from the start. And we saw that, you know, kids when Star Wars came out were kind of, oh, I'm too old for it, I'm 10. But displaying stuff and not playing with it is more of a mature concept. So Star Wars was really pitched at a lot of different age groups.
Yes. I was going to say something. I found it interesting that, like with Luke, they still got a yellow lightsaber. By that point, you think they would have figured out, hey, dude, it's blue. But yeah, it does look pretty cool. Joel actually had some of the stands here as well, which is very, very cool.
Yeah. So, and here we go with some of the first vehicles released. And when we were looking last week at some of the misgivings that toy companies had, when they saw some of these things, they saw the Tauntaun as a giant kangaroo, and they kind of said, oh, was Star Wars a one-off hit? Are kids really going to want a giant kangaroo as this toy for the new Star Wars movie? So the first vehicles released were the Tauntaun and creatures with the Tauntaun and the Wampa, and I loved both of these when I was a kid. Interestingly enough, even though I was collecting when Star Empire came out, I don't actually remember seeing a standard Tauntaun in Australia. I only ever saw the open belly one here for a long time, and then in sort of the secondary market then I saw them. So I don't know if it was just in my area or it was just the way they were distributed, but these were both very cool toys, and they must have sold a ton of them. These days it's really hard to find a Wampa with white fur. A lot of them have turned yellow, and the rubber plastic on the reins and the saddle has started to go on this stuff. So really it's reached the end of its toy life, and they have now gone over into collectibles, because if you play with them, they are just going to break.
Here's a bit of an in-joke for the Vile and myself. It's Des Webb. It's supposed to be with the DES, not DEZ, but Des Webb was the actor who played the Wampa, and there's a very funny story. I won't share it here. It'll take too long and bore the crap out of everybody, but it's actually a very funny story about the fact that Des Webb was actually the guy who played the Wampa, and I knew that when I went to a party, and someone said, oh, he's not going to know that, and sure enough, I did. So maybe the coolest kid in school when we found that out. The old gag about what's the temperature inside of a Tauntaun, it, of course, is a lukewarm. So there you go.
And then after we've looked at the mini rigs, and we've looked at the cardboard play sets. Here's some of the larger play sets. And this was one of those things where Kenner would often mirror stuff. So if the bad guys had a ship, the good guys would have a ship equal size. And here you've got the turret defense with Probot that was from the movie, and then you've got the Imperial attack base, which is a totally made up thing. But as a kid, I thought both of them were pretty cool. I don't know if it's totally made up. When I was a kid, I pretended that's when Darth and the snow troopers were walking through Echo Base, and they were just attacking the base, but you didn't see the roof to it kind of thing. So the thing with this is, you, again, if you had the figures and the smaller vehicles, then you could populate them with on these play sets, and you could build your collection in different themes. And as you can see there, the turret and Probot and the Imperial attack base have got the blue backgrounds for the Hoth theme, which they did pretty much with everything except for a pink snow speeder. So I don't know who was on charge that day. And then we've got some of the figures that were available. And again, all of these figures were great. The one thing that I was surprised about, even as a kid, that Luke didn't come with a lightsaber, but he came with a rifle, because as you know, Luke never fires a rifle on Hoth, but him and Han both use a lightsaber, and you would think that they were equally cost the same to produce and put in the figure. And it would have made sense, if you're having an open belly Tauntaun, that you'd release a Luke or a Han with a lightsaber, so at least you could do the play thing of slashing the belly and stuffing Luke inside. So that was my thoughts about that.
The only thing I never liked about the probe droid is it never stood up. Right, as you can see here, it needs a stand to stand up. It won't stand on its own legs, the bloody stupid design. And I knew a guy who ran a toy shop back in the day, and he actually, I looked at the catalogue of all the stuff that was coming out, because I couldn't afford any of it. But just looking at the pictures, you could actually, your imagination was enough to make you enjoy it more so than necessarily actually owning it, which was very, very groovy. So, yes. Good stuff. I have to play a video. Give me a second. I've got to find it now. Oh, my God. My eyes are gone all blurry. Anything you want to say while I'm looking for this?
This video settles a bet that me and Dags have been talking about since the show started.
Yeah, right. And I've just ignored him completely. So, you know, what makes these people correct? All right, here we go. So hopefully the sound is okay, and we'll give it a bell. So there we go.
It's new AT-AT, the all-terrain armored transport from Kenner. Batteries not included, action figures each sold separately. You can make AT-AT walk. Its legs are big enough to crush obstacles. You can move AT-AT's head and pretend to scan for rebels. AT-AT has a cockpit for Imperial Commander and AT-AT driver, and laser machine guns. When you push a button to fire the laser cannons, you activate battle lights and sounds. There's even a troop compartment. New AT-AT from Kenner's Star Wars, the Empire Strikes Back collection.
Now, keeping in mind, these were the people who gave you Zucus and Forlom, right? And they kind of cocked that one up. So
I have to say, I looked into how do you pronounce AT-AT, and there is actually from Lucasfilm Licensing an email that says AT-AT is pronounced AT-AT, the same pronunciation as hat. Was what they used as the example. And they said this has been used in toys, video games. It's never been used in the movies, but that's the official Lucasfilm Bible pronunciation of AT-AT. So I'm going to go with saying that from now on.
And then somewhere along the way, they produced an ATST, and you go, well, that doesn't work. There's an ATTE, an ATDP, an ATPT. And I said, all right, smart ass, how do you pronounce those? Using that system.
They actually addressed that in the email and said where the pronunciation can't be shortened, they use the full letters.
That is complete tripe. So there you go. Ultimately, what it really is, it's actually an Imperial Walker. That's basically what it is. And if you're looking at it from a technical term, it's an all-terrain armored transport. They just sort of shortened it just for simplicity purposes. Well, even in the novel, they call them walkers.
They call them walkers in the movie. They don't really use any of the acronyms. The interesting thing about the Imperial Walker toy is, for such an awesome vehicle, it only stands in about 2 different positions. If you try to actually make it walk or position it, it just falls straight over. But it is one of my favorite toys of all time, the Imperial Walker. We've got here the Scout Walker and the Imperial Walker, and both of them were fantastic toys. The Scout Walker was amazing because you could push the button in the back and the legs actually would stomp on Ewoks. We never got the Scout Walker for Empire Strikes Back. It was another one of those in the catalogue that said not available. So I didn't see the Empire version until years later, but the Return of the Jedi version was everywhere. The Imperial Walker was a fantastic toy. I didn't have it as a kid. It was one of those toys I would go into the toy shop and drool over. I think it was $89, so $90 in Maya, which was basically you're never ever going to have it kind of level of stuff. And I do remember that was the same price as the Star Wars, the Space Lego huge spaceship as well, and both of them I never got because they were too expensive as a child. It was an expensive toy because at the time you could get Castle Grayskull for about $39. So if you were looking at sort of a comparison size to what you got, I guess Mattel were giving you more for your money. But still, if we're looking at classic toys, not just in Star Wars, but across everything. The Imperial Walker is one of the best toys I think that was ever produced for the era.
Tell you what, we've started an entire argument here of all these people saying it's this and it's that and it's that and it's this. It's like, yes, never the twain shall meet. What I like about the Scout Walker is that until you see Return of the Jedi and you see it properly, their eyes are closed. So they've got the flaps that come down over the eyes. So these walkers are actually blind. They can't see where they're going because the flaps aren't open. So, in terms of when it's like the Millennium Falcon, when you saw the, I'm still calling it AT-AT, Lucasfilm can go jump, especially from back in the 80s. I loved it, except the head was too big, and obviously it was too big so you could put the figures into it. But as a thing, I saw that in the stores. I go, that is grouse. I can never afford one of those. That's definitely for the rich kids. So, yes, indeed, catering for all markets, as it were. Very cool.
And then we've got the last couple of larger vehicles from Empire. The Snow Speeder, which was a mid-sized one, I guess. It was kind of the same size as when the TIE Fighter and the X-Wing came out previously. And it was a very cool toy. It had like the lights and the sounds, and it had the tow cable out the back. And then the Imperial Transport, which was another toy that I never saw in Australia, and it was in the catalogues. And the Imperial Transport was a weird one because it was a ship that was also kind of a carry case. So they put this handle thing on the top of it so you could put all your figures in and carry them around, which I kind of thought ruined the look of the toy. But it is an unusual one that they did produce, considering some of the other ships that they didn't produce, that the Imperial Transport, which basically in a couple of scenes in Empire got this huge whopping toy made out of it.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. Every time they produced a carry case for action figures, there's no way in the world you're going to get them all to fit. You need the world's biggest carry case, size of a bloody shipping container. So, I got to say, the Rebel Transport, I didn't do anything for me. I looked at that, so that's boring in comparison to all the others. But I guess it was a bit more practical in that regard. But very cool.
And then we go over to the Slave One, which is an amazing ship as well. And the cool thing about this is you see it in the movie a couple of times, and you do see Boba Fett sitting in there at different positions, but they actually designed it so, when you moved it around the cockpit would move. So Boba Fett was always sort of sitting upright. And what's really amazing, that was remembered so much that when they did The Mandalorian, all these imaginations that I had as a kid is, what would it be like sitting inside the ship when it changes like the axis of its horizon? What would it be like? They actually showed it. So that was one of those things that was a big tick in The Mandalorian, as something that was very cool that went right back to my childhood. So the Slave One was another one of those amazing ships. And I remember at the time, the Empire had like the very angular ships, and the Rebels had a look to their ships as well. But the Slave One was just totally different from all the other ships that were available. Now, there is a really rare version of the Slave One. I don't think it was released in Australia, but it came with that cardboard landing bay display that's in the bottom right corner. And that has to be one of the rarest versions to find locally. That's one of the few, another one of those items I've never had in my collection, like the TIE Bomber. So really, really rare. But you don't have to pay full price for it, because there are people all over Etsy selling replicas if you just want a replica to display your Slave One on. So Slave One, another classic ship.
So even though the Slave One design was based on a street light from Marin County, every time it flew, it just reminded me of an elephant. So you got the elephant's ears there, and you got the long the trunk, and it just was an unusual design. But there you go. According to Jared, fun fact in Star Wars Clone Wars, they call it an AT-AT in Walker. The funny thing is, there wouldn't have been AT-ATs in Clone Wars. They had AT-TEs. The AT-ATs shouldn't have existed at that point, but I could be wrong. But anyway, we move on. Good stuff. Technical, nerdy stuff. I love it.
And then we go from one of the coolest ships to, I remember this coming out and thinking, what the hell were they thinking? Like, this is a Star Destroyer. This looks nothing like a Star Destroyer. I did like the Darth Vader's meditation chamber was in there. But the biggest disappointment for me is it came with the hologram of the Emperor. And when I originally got it, I looked for this hologram of the Emperor everywhere, and I couldn't work out. And then you go through the instructions, and it's that little red strip that's in the top corner under the Rip It Off the Card logo, and it hasn't even got like the impression of the Emperor on it. It's got like these sort of wavy lines, and you attach that to the roof of the Star Destroyer, and that's just meant to be the Emperor contacting Darth Vader. So sometimes they got the toys really right, and sometimes they got them really wrong. I don't know why they couldn't have done a blue version and at least printed like a face on it or something like that, so it looked like a hologram. The one redeeming feature this had for me was the box had the bounty hunters on. So because I was a big fan of the bounty hunters, I got this mainly for the box and because the bounty hunters were standing there, but I couldn't for the life of me work out how that was meant to be the Star Destroyer. And we talked before, in Star Wars, Kenner was the Star Destroyers, they called them Imperial Cruisers. So when we had the the die-cast collection, it was Imperial Cruiser. But by Empire Strikes Back, they changed all of the merchandising to Star Destroyers. And there was a big discussions over what they were going to call this, because it was Darth Vader's Star Destroyer, but it was the Executor, and they didn't think that was a very good name for a toy. So they went through all these different versions of what they could call Darth Vader's Star Destroyer. Then they just said, well, let's just call it Darth Vader's Star Destroyer. But it would have been cool if maybe it had had an outer shell that looked more like a Star Destroyer and you opened it up. But for me, it was always one of those disappointing, badly designed. Yeah, I can see what Kyle Reese is saying. They were in the middle of the asteroid field, so the the hologram wasn't coming through too well.
Actually, that's not true, because they move out of the asteroid field so they can send a clear transmission. So there you go. And yeah, typical NBN. So yeah, it is kind of funny, eh?
And down in the bottom left-hand corner there's actually the prototype design for the Star Destroyer, and it kind of looks more to me like a G.I. Joe type vehicle than a Star Wars vehicle. So after so many good versions, they dropped the ball a couple of times. In my opinion, I'm sure this is probably someone's favorite playset, but for me, it was more the box art was fantastic, not so much the play value.
I thought it was fun. I actually like the term Imperial Cruiser. It kind of worked for me. And when they went to Star Destroyer, I thought, that sounds really, really cool. And then you got Vader's ship, and they go, what do we call that? We just call it a Super Star Destroyer. And you go, that's freaking pretty ordinary, isn't it? Oh, goodness gracious. Now, I hope Gavin's watching this, because he's going to love the next bit.
And here we go, sort of the other playset and area from the movie that toys were produced on was Dagger Bar and Yoda. And Yoda was one of those characters that was instantly popular. And like Boba Fett, I had a hard time finding a Yoda when I was growing up. For some reason, I remember a couple of times going to the shops and people had stolen Yoda. So the card was ripped open and Yoda was gone. And I don't know, like because I love toys so much, it's traumatic when I see something like that happened in a toy shop. But I do remember twice I thought I'd found Yoda, and it was just the card sitting there, and some scoundrel had ripped the card off and taken Yoda.
Based on your own mindset, that card is actually worth more than the figure now. So you should have kept the card, dude.
I'm just wondering if you got your friend to rip it off for you.
No, I don't recall having the Yoda figure, but I do remember the hand puppet in the middle. That was boring, but you stick your hand up there and you can get him to nod, and that was it.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting side with the hand puppet. When I was in high school, we did a production. It wasn't a production. It was scenes from To Kill a Mockingbird, and we did them in puppets. And I said, I've got a Yoda hand puppet at home. I can bring in, and that was the judge from to Kill a Mockingbird for a couple of scenes. But I rewrote all the dialogue, so the judge from To Kill a Mockingbird spoke in backwards Yoda talk. So everyone didn't get the joke except for me. But that's my memory of the Yoda hand puppet. They have recently reissued that, as in like a year or two ago, and they turned it into a dog toy. So it is exactly the same mold. It's actually more vibrant green, and they've sealed the bottom off and made it squeezy. So when you squeeze it, it makes those sort of sounds that the dog toys make, almost like a pig snorting.
No. When the dog bites it, it's going to go, rrr, 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 maybe not. Got a question for you. In the middle, is that the plaster paint kit? I assume he's been the blue bit here.
No. Well, that in the middle was the mail-away kit that you got Yoda's training harness with. I just put it there because it actually came with some versions of the Dagger Bar playset. All of those versions are the real versions. I think some of them are just lit differently. The other thing about the Dagger Bar playset is the bog is gone. The bog lasted about 10 years, and the bog was just made out of foam. and is gone. But the hilarious thing is you could buy bog replacement kits. I kid you not. So Dagger Bar bog replacement kits, and you'd get them, and I got a couple to replace them because they were cheap and they're always gone. Now the bog replacement kits have gone too. So even the replacement kits to replace the bog didn't last. So that's one of the things with Dagger Bar, very hard to find a mint one with undamaged bog.
So it's not Dago Bar, it's Dago Bog when you sit and think about it. So there you go. Very good.
And this was the other vehicle. I don't quite understand why it got released. I guess it was an interesting looking vehicle and they released everything from the movie. This is one of those vehicles, instantly the caps, the latches on the caps to the vehicle break. Very hard to get them with both of the catches on the top. Often you'll have to buy two of them and put one complete one together. And it does show you the extent they gave you to expand your collection with the stuff from Best Ben, where you've got the main characters there, Best Ben, Han and Luke and Leia and Darth Vader. But then you've got a lot of the secondary characters like Ugnaughts and various security guards and Lando, and even the twin pod cloud car pilot, which came with two accessories, the gun and the little communicator, which is one of the hardest accessories to find because it's always lost because it's such a tiny little thing. But that was, sorry.
No, go
on. That was one of the vehicles that didn't get re-released in the modern line for years and years and years. So I think the only thing they haven't re-released now is the only major thing is probably the Dagger Bar playset. And I think I heard that's because the original toy molds for that were either damaged or lost. So they have produced now a twin pod cloud car.
Once we started talking about Dagger and the bog and all that, there's just all these comments. I'm not going to put them on the screen regarding bogs. It's just very inappropriate, but very amusing. What can I say? I'm going to love all the designs of Star Wars, but the twin pod cloud car is completely stupid. You got two dudes, one on each side, and you're thinking, well, who's flying? What if one wants to go left, one wants to go right? Or if they're flying and there's a pole in the middle and say, we'll just skirt around that and it flies in the middle. It's a shocking design. Yeah, wasn't a big fan of that, but anyway, whatever. Not my problem. There you go.
And the other thing I have to look at as a separate section is the bounty hunters, because the bounty hunters, it's really clever, I think, what they did with Star Wars, because you had people who loved the Rebels and you had people who loved the Empire, but the bounty hunters were kind of another affiliation again. It's kind of what they did with Jabba the Hutt in the next movie, where they expanded the actual universe. So now there's another group of people. They don't work for the Rebels, they don't work for the Empire, they're their own thing. And it really fleshed out the story that this was a universe where, there were different levels of people doing different things. And again, with what I was saying about Bosk, I remember seeing all the pictures of bounty hunters from the swap cards and the toys and stuff, and it was one of those really disappointing things where you realize they're not going to be in the movie beyond really one of the scene that they're in, and then you get Boba Fett. But again, the expanded universe has really fleshed out the bounty hunters, and it is really surprising when we go to the next slide that Boba Fett was such a popular character, but there really wasn't a lot of merchandise in the old days produced for him. He was a mysterious character that was in the cartoon, and then he got the Kenner figure, and then he got the 12-inch figure, and then his image is on a few things, but there really weren't a lot of Boba Fett toys. So the mythology of this figure did really build up after Return of the Jedi, where the comics flashed out his backstory and he became cooler and cooler. And there are interviews where George Lucas says, it might even be on the commentaries, the one thing I wish I'd done different is I wouldn't have killed Boba Fett, because he was just like a character, had a couple of lines and we killed him off. And who would have known that he was going to become one of the most popular characters from the whole Star Wars saga. But at the time, he was instantly popular, even though he only said a few things. And I think it was because of the color design, where a lot of the bad guys were black and white, and then you had Boba Fett that was like multicolored. So he had kid appeal, and it was like a lot of the other bounty hunters, where if you didn't like the different versions of stormtroopers and snowtroopers and AT-AT drivers and things like that, then you had the weird aliens, which were kind of the cantina of this movie. And the one thing that is different now to back then, because aliens were more expensive to make, they seem special, I think. in Star Wars, when you had the cantina, you saw all those aliens and they were special. And then in Empire, there weren't a lot of aliens. There was pretty much the bounty hunters and a couple of background ones in Bespin, and that was it. Return of the Jedi, they realized that the aliens sold a lot, so that just exploded everywhere. But for Star Wars and Empire, the different looking characters still seem to have that unique specialness about them. That's why I think that they took off so well at the time.
Just quickly, I think I agree with you on the colour scheme, but I think it's the design of the helmet, the T-shaped visor. Just looking at the picture without knowing anything else, and the way that was certainly marketed on the action figure card with the drawing rather than the photograph of the character for the first one. Yeah, that was it. I remember my best friend at the time, he was 10 years old, same as I was, and he was like, this thing is awesome. We don't know anything about him whatsoever. Just visually, he's a winner straight away. So I think just the design of the helmet is probably, you change the helmet of the character to anything else, and it just loses its interest straight away. So just I don't know, psychologically, you can do a psychological study on why the helmet alone has such a massive appeal with the T-shape. So yeah, sorry, go on.
Even the black and the white version that looked more like stormtrooper armor with that helmet still looks incredibly cool.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So there you go. Very, very cool.
And so now we're after the release of the movie and the toys, and we get to the home video release. And I think everyone knows I'm a big home video junkie. And I've told the story before where my parents bought the home video. It wasn't a home video, it was a rental at the time, and it was $120 Australian to buy Empire Strikes Back when it came out. But that's what video libraries were selling it for, buying it for. They weren't selling it. It wasn't a sell through at all. That's what they were buying it for, to rent, because home video really didn't exist for new movies at the time. So that's what it cost. But I love The Empire Strikes Back because they did use in the different regions the posters for different the posters from the different regions for the video releases. So it was fun to collect The Empire Strikes Back. And it was more fun than Star Wars, because Star Wars generally used the same pictures in different regions on the video. But Empire Strikes Back did use the different posters from the different releases. So I remember, again, before the internet, I went to the UK, and instead of like the Gone with the Wind sort of poster or the Japanese movie poster that we got here, they had this big white Hoth scene. And I was like, oh, I have to get that. And then they had the widescreen version, which we didn't have ever an option in Australia for the widescreen stuff at the time. And they had the standard version, and they had different color covers. So one of them had a blue background and one of them had a white background. And I went down the slippery slope of collecting every different version of, the Star Wars movies. So by the time the special editions came out, I had about 40 different versions of the 4 movies, just because they had different cuts or different colors, or were remastered, or widescreen, or they were pan and scan, or something like that. So it's quite nuts, and that's probably one of the reasons they're one of the biggest home video sellers ever, because there was so many different versions. When you have different versions, you can get the market buying the one version they want, but there's also the other market that has to get every different version to get like the complete collection. Were you one of those that collected different versions, Dags?
No, not at all. I didn't really own a VCR until the mid-'80s by that point, and so it just sort of didn't happen. I actually recorded The Empire Strikes Back off TV, and there's a funny story regarding that, which I'll share another day. And I just watched that, so I wasn't into buying the pre-release ones. Got a couple of comments. This is interesting, actually. So Dave's made a mention about, we go back to Boba Fett, James Bond and Army had all the Q-style gadgets. The funny thing is, even though if you had all the things pointed out, he only got to use 1 or 2 of them in the movie. So aside from his, the what do you call it? The thing that comes out of your arm, the grappling thing, the rope, whatever it's called, he didn't really get to use much else. So it wasn't until... we know he had all these doodads, but he didn't, and he's just didn't get to really use them, which is a bit of a shame. And Jared said he looks like a Spartan warrior. I hadn't really thought of that before. Maybe that's got something to do with it.
No, I hadn't either. So kind of does. Just the T-shaped helmet does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Joel said, the art was amazing on the VHS, and you're right, it did look pretty spectacular. So believe it or not, we've actually jumped over Empire, and we're now here.
So we're moving away from Empire Strikes Back, and we're setting up down the track where we will go to the new movie, which everyone knows is a different name, but there is some Blue Harvest memorabilia. And do you want to explain to everyone what Blue Harvest is, Dags?
All right. So when they were producing, because obviously Star Wars at this point was such a big thing, when they were filming in Yuma, Arizona in America, the sand dunes, They didn't want all the people with their dune buggies to realize they were making a Star Wars movie there. So they created a brand new title for the film, a ghost title called Blue Harvest Horror Beyond Imagination, and produced their own merchandise for it to try and throw everybody off the scent. I reckon it would have had limited success once they saw a big-ass Jabba sail barge out in the desert, but they did it anyway. And so that's where the term Blue Harvest came from.
And there isn't really any Blue Harvest merchandise until modern times where fans wanted it, so they produced T-shirts and stuff. But there was cruise stuff available, and it is some of the hardest stuff to track down and some of the most expensive stuff that turns up on the secondary market, where there's only a few genuine items that are out there. So again, if you find some genuine Blue Harvest stuff, you're doing pretty well. But a lot of it out there is reproductions.
Here's an interesting one from Kyle saying it was the design. I'm not too sure which part you're referring to. All these suggestive cues that left to the viewer to decide and add their own interpretation. No need to explain everything. Some people really like that, where it's just hinted at certain things are possible and they make up their own stories in their minds. And other people want to see it all on screen. And I guess it's up to the viewer to determine which version they prefer. So, using as an example between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, you've got the Clone Wars. Now, if you don't watch the Clone Wars animated series, you have to make up your own mind as to what happened in that timeline. But alternatively, if you want to know, you watch the animated series. So it's an interesting sort of point. So,
George Lucas was really good at seeding stuff like that. When he talks about the Clone Wars, they didn't follow that up until 20 years later. So, and I remember wondering what the Clone Wars were and if, who were clones and what was what. But anyway, I do totally agree. We all knew Blue Harvest wasn't the next movie coming out. The next Star Wars blockbuster was going to be Revenge of the Jedi. Now, Revenge of the Jedi was around on Empire Strikes Back merchandise, which is why I'm including it sort of in this presentation. And if you find stuff with Revenge of the Jedi on, it sort of has that almost mythical, like what could have been, mystical thing about it. And a lot of the Revenge of the Jedi stuff was on stickers, and then they stuck other stickers over the top because it got changed so fast. And in different markets, it had different stickers, and it progressed along longer. And I think one of the things was George Lucas kept changing his mind backwards and forwards to what he was going to call it. The interesting thing, one of the things they said, they called it Revenge of the Jedi because so much bootleg merchandise came out. They wanted the bootleggers to do it. There ain't much bootleg merchandise from the time that says Revenge of the Jedi on. So I don't know if that really was a valid point that they were getting, tons and tons of fake merchandise from China. I didn't really notice bootlegs probably until the prequel trilogy. So I don't know what they were thinking. I just think they thought it was going to be Revenge of the Jedi, and then he changed his mind, and that was it. So that's where we end up with Empire Strikes Back, my favorite movie of the Star Wars trilogy.
Very good. Yeah, when we get around to doing the Jedi stuff, there's a fair bit I can cover off on regarding that. And I remember that period very, very well. So very good stuff. And Kai was saying, the costumes, the sets, everything. And the reason why Star Wars had such great appeal, because everything was used and damaged and broken. It wasn't all pristine and brand new, which was very, very common for science fiction movies and TV shows at that time. And you are right, Phil. Yes, that's an obvious one when you sit and think about it. I mean, Jedis don't seek revenge, so they couldn't use the name Revenge in the title, even though it sounds pretty damn good. Ironically, of course, once you had Revenge of the Sith, it sounded fantastic. So it balanced out quite nicely. So there you go. Very cool. Any further things you want to add before we shove off, Mr. Aaron?
There was one thing I wanted to cover here, and I just couldn't because there's so little information about it. And that was during Empire Strikes Back's run in Australia, Myer put on a massive toy display for Kenner Empire Strikes Back. And I went as a child, and it absolutely blew my mind. I do remember seeing pictures of it somewhere, but I could not find them. Years ago, I actually contacted Myer and asked them if they had any pictures or had any information on it, and they kind of laughed at me. They said, we want to do a coffee table book on Myers windows, and we don't even have pictures of all of those. And you really think we're going to have toy pictures from the 80s? And I kind of thought, yeah, I guess they weren't thinking of it like that back then. That was something, I don't know if you went to that in the top story that was absolutely mind-blowing as a kid, these dioramas of the asteroid field with the ships through them and a massive Hoth And I do remember, I think the AT-ATs were moving. I think their heads were moving, or one of the legs was going up and down or something. I would love to see pictures of that just to see if what was actually there matches my memory, or my memory has blown it out of all proportion. But that was the one thing I couldn't find much information on.
Yeah, you keep thinking, why do they keep mopping the damn floors? And you think they're not. It's just all the drool from all these kids. And yeah, that was just absolutely spectacular. So, and when you're young kids like we were, it was like, oh, it was the greatest thing in the entire universe. But your memory of it is better than mine. But I just remember just mind blowing. Yeah, absolutely. So very, very cool. All right, then I guess it's time for us to shovel off, as it were. And I guess we should take this opportunity to say that mate, all your collectibles remain mint in box.
Or rip them off the card.
See ya.
In the not-so-distant future on a planet called Earth, it's Underoos.
Star Wars Boba Fett is here. That means Darth Vader's always near. C-3PO is lots of style. And R2-D2 just makes me smile. Star Wars Underoos are here, yeah! Something out of sight in underwear.
Don't be so ridiculous, R2. Underoos are for Earthlings.
Who was it? Here we go. Secret after the credits. There you go. How good is that?
So anyone who hung around, we've got a secret bonus.
There you go. Yes. Get into it any way you can.
So here's the Star Wars Underoos. And what I found crazy about this, there are 2 lots of Underoos there that have been sent into AFA and been graded. And Dags and I were talking about, if you're a worker at AFA and you get someone's grotty old jocks to grade, how do you go about doing that? And I said, if you get a grading, you don't want one of the subgrades to be Y for yellow on your Underoos, do you?
We're talking about bogs earlier for Dagger Bar. It just wouldn't work well. This is so someone. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just going to stop right now.
The other interesting thing, just for trivia nuts out there, the little girl in that was Erica Eleniak, who was from Baywatch and Under Siege, and E.T.'s girlfriend in Elliot's girlfriend in E.T., and later a Playboy model as well. So it's one of those areas of collecting. Obviously, people collect them, but we couldn't really fit it into the main show. So thanks for hanging around. There's your underwear bonus for the day.
Yeah, actually, the 3 characters, they're obviously adults modelling this stuff. They're not little kids, as we've seen before. So
I put that one there because they've actually reissued Underoos for adults. They're actually modern stuff. Now, there's an interesting fact that we'll probably leave this show on, because Dags, you're probably gonna shut me down. The C-3PO Underoos were for girls. They did do a boys version, but it was recorded pretty fast because they had the same error on it as the C-3PO Goldenrod card, and it wasn't seen appropriate for children.
So when if you're looking at the lady in the C-3PO thing, and the first thing that comes to mind is, goodness gracious me. So, there you go. Yes, we thought we'd just finish on this. It's a bit, it goes in a lot of wrong directions. So we didn't want to spend too much time on it, but hopefully people have stuck around to sort of see it all. So there you go. All right, we're going to nick off, and I don't know if I should show the end credits again, but yeah, I probably will, just to make sure.
Everyone who's still here and didn't disappear, for the show next week, you can say to everyone who did disappear, "Oh, the best thing about the show was the post credits underwear show."
Yeah, very good. Do you reckon I should finish with this?
Good night.
All right, everybody, have a good night. We'll see you next week. All right. Okay.
Have a good night, guys. See you.
Bye.